Hello and welcome to my channel, Rhino here. Today we're looking at another Matt Powell video. That's right, Matt Powell still exists. Well, barely. His channel doesn't get all that much traffic nowadays, and I know a bunch of you guys will go watch the original, so I thought I'd help the little tyke out and give him a little view boost. I mean, I'd rather not, all things being equal, but I don't think a one-time blip from me will equate to any permanent growth for his channel, so what the hey. Anyway, this video is an excerpt from a podcast in which Powell claims to have debunked the entire atheist community, the whole thing, in one fell swoop. Well, it's been a good run, but let's see what's causing my imminent retirement.
So let's talk about the universe, shall we? The universe, as we know it, was created by what is known as the Big Bang, or so we believe.
Okay, so it looks like Matt is doing a response video to this Anna Campbell person, which, fine, whatever, but if you're going to be claiming to debunk the entire atheist community, wouldn't it be best to start off with, an atheist? I watched through her video. It is her explaining why she believes in God, but doesn't think of God in the same way as Christians do, instead referring to God as the ultimate source for everything, so, like a deistic God. Definitely not an atheist. And if you're looking to debunk something like the Big Bang, would you not want to go to a scientific source for information on what the Big Bang is, rather than a YouTuber? Like, if some creationist were to go through my channel and find that I am wrong about most of what I say about evolution, that would not prove evolution wrong, that would prove me wrong. Now, this isn't going to happen because I take great care in making sure that I am presenting as accurate a view of the science as it is possible for me to do, so you might find the odd mistake here and there, but I am confident that the big points that I've made are all accurate.
The Big Bang is the belief that the universe essentially came from nothing. And that's hard to understand because how could something so enormous and, significant and just magical come from nothing?
See? That is one view, sure, but the real answer is that we don't know where the universe came from. It's possible that the singularity has existed for as long as time has existed. It's possible that it did come from nothing, and that nothing is just so unstable that it could not continue to exist, and so the universe began. It could be neither of these. The truth is, we don't know for sure. But to just say that the Big Bang is the belief that the universe expanded out of nothing is a bit oversimplified. But you also have to take into consideration her target audience. She is a lifestyle vlogger. She's not talking to people who follow her specifically for the scientific knowledge bombs she's dropping. This is just a video of her explaining her reason for believing in her version of God. And kudos to her. In her original video, she actually does a decent job of explaining it without making too many errors. Her biggest mistake is presenting the everything from nothing hypothesis as if the scientific community is unified on the matter. And even then, she kinda hedges a little bit on that, so she does pretty good with the science, all things considered.
It's funny how she words this.
No, it's not. She's talking about the higher power that she believes in. Using the word magical to describe the universe is how she kinda gets there.
She says, I just don't understand how, this world could come from nothing. That's because it's not understandable, because it's not true. Truth is things that we can understand.
Truth is not determined by our ability to understand it. To a baby, before they develop object permanence, they are incapable of understanding that when they can't see someone, that person still exists. Does this mean that it is literally not true that people still exist when babies can't see them, since it is completely impossible for a baby to understand object permanence? Of course not. I don't understand differential equations, so I guess they must not be true. You don't understand basic logic, so I guess logic is out the window now too. Oh, and fun fact, nobody really understands how airplanes fly. The math works, so we can design the most efficient wings and all that, but the actual mechanism is a bit of a mystery. Bernoulli's theorem of fluid dynamics is usually the favorite explanation, where the air acts like a fluid and moves faster over a curved surface, creating a low-pressure area just above the curved surface. And this does happen, but we don't know why it moves faster. When I was in flight school, the instructor explained that the air molecule has to go faster in order to arrive at the trailing edge of the wing at the same time as the air molecules that went under the wing on the flat side. This creates a low-pressure system above the wing, creating lift. But why does the air molecule have to meet up with its counterpart at the same time? What causes that? We haven't figured that one out yet. And on top of that, it doesn't explain how airplanes are still able to fly upside down. When they are upside down, the low pressure should still exist on the same side of the wing, thereby pushing the plane down to the ground. And yet, lift still keeps the plane aloft, for unknown reasons. One of the other ideas is that Newton's laws of motion are responsible. The wing of the plane is angled such that it pushes on the lower air, and the air pushes back with an equal and opposite force. The critical factor here is the angle of attack, the angle at which the wing intercepts the air. This works for wings of all shapes and orientations, and so is actually a better explanation than Bernoulli's theorem, even though Bernoulli's theorem still seems to be the prevalent one. But it fails to account for the low pressure that is created above the wing, even in scenarios that Bernoulli's theorem wouldn't predict. So neither explanation is complete, and we don't know why. There are a couple of other explanations which seek to kind of combine the two, but they have problems of their own. So we don't understand how planes fly. Therefore, with Matt's definition of truth here being things that we can understand, it is not true that planes can fly. And yet they do. Therefore, Matt must be wrong.
Truth is what we can demonstrate, what the facts are.
Truth is that which comports with reality. What the facts are might be an acceptable alternate phrasing, but our ability or inability to demonstrate it does not necessarily line up with how well something actually comports with reality. This is where the scientific method comes in, so we can make predictions based on what we think is true, test those predictions, and weed out predictions that don't hold up. We predict, based on certain math, that a plane with these dimensions will be able to fly. We test that first in wind tunnels, then in test planes, and if the prediction holds up, then it turns out that it was true all along that planes with that shape would be able to fly. The fact that we don't understand exactly how it flies is completely irrelevant to the fact that it does fly.
And so, I love it when YouTubers put out videos like this because it really demonstrates how, and even atheists that put out videos like this, it really demonstrates how what they believe is flawed as far as the scientific method goes.
I mean, so far, we're 48 seconds in. Only 30 seconds of that has been you talking, and yet, in such a short time, you have already demonstrated a clear lack of understanding of logic, philosophy, and the scientific method. In fact, you've mangled your definition of truth so badly that I don't think even you would agree with it if you actually were to sit down and think about it for a bit. After all, do you not believe that God is the ultimate source of truth or something along those lines? Truth is absolute. There aren't different truths for different people. There is one immutable truth. That's my understanding of your position, but the statement truth is what we can demonstrate is not compatible with the existence of absolute truth. Because different people have different abilities, some will be able to demonstrate truth in a different way than others. Think of the analogy of the blind men feeling an elephant. Each one describes something completely different, guessing that the object that they are feeling is something that it is not. The truth is that it is an elephant. But with your definition of truth, the guy proclaiming that the elephant is like the trunk of a tree because he's only feeling its legs must be describing the elephant accurately because he is able to demonstrate that touching the elephant where he was touching it demonstrates that it is like the trunk of a tree. But of course, this is absurd. The whole point of that story is to explain why different truths can appear different while all being simultaneously true.
So, just to debunk this using scientific fact, the first law of thermodynamics states that matter cannot be created nor destroyed.
Not quite. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed in an isolated system. Matter is basically frozen energy, to use an oversimplified analogy. So the law does apply to matter by extension, but matter can appear to be created or destroyed if we ignore this fact. So the more accurate phrasing of the first law of thermodynamics is the energy version, because that includes both energy and matter, no matter how you slice it. I prefer my matter sliced into segments, like pie.
It's known as the conservation of matter and energy.
You can just leave it at energy. That includes both. But given the fact that you apparently think that there is air in space that the sun uses for fuel?
But in space, wouldn't it be a different scenario based on the fact that, the space and the air in the space is much different than the air we have here?
I'm not inclined to think that you understand the link between matter and energy.
And so if at one point there was no time, space, or matter, time, space, and matter cannot magically create itself.
I don't know of anyone suggesting magic as the actual mechanism. Well, anyone that's not a creationist. because creationists literally believe that a guy spoke the universe into existence, which is pretty much the exact description of a magical incantation. Now, sure, Anna described the universe as magical, but suggesting that magic is the actual mechanism behind the origin of the universe doesn't seem to be what she was getting at there.
There has to be an external force.
How have you demonstrated that there does, in fact, have to be an external force to kick off the Big Bang? Have you done the math or made any important observations, or are you just relying on intuition?
And so I always like to ask atheists, do you believe that an external force created time, space, and matter, something outside of the laws of physics?
I don't know. It's possible that space and energy existed before time, and that something about that combination caused time to begin. It's possible that a true nothing is unstable and so cannot continue, thereby bringing space-time and energy into existence. It's possible that something else is the explanation. But one thing is certain. The physics of the early universe are not intuitive. So us expecting that our intuition, which evolved to help us make quick decisions in our macro-scaled lives, would apply equally well on the quantum level, where we have to go in order to make sense of the early universe, is just silly. As far as the laws of physics go, it is possible that they wouldn't apply at such scales. It is also possible that our understanding of the laws of physics are incomplete, and so they do apply, but not in the way that we yet understand. And of course, there's also the fact that when you add up all the energy and matter in the universe, between the positive energy of temperature and mass and the negative energy of gravity, the total energy of the universe appears to be zero, which would mean that the universe coming into existence out of nothing does not violate thermodynamics at all, as the zero total energy of the universe is the same as the zero total energy of nothing.
Or do you believe that time, space, and matter popped into existence naturalistically and magically?
Those two things are pretty much opposites. If it's naturalistic, it is not magical, and vice versa, pretty much by definition.
Because if it was a naturalistic creation, it would have been a magic act.
That statement demonstrates your complete lack of understanding of philosophical or methodological naturalism.
So, you have to ask the question, what is magical? Somebody creating the universe, or matter and energy creating itself from nothing?
Somebody creating the universe, obviously. A person says an incantation, and now, poof, fully formed stuff exists. That is magic, plain and simple. But mathematically consistent explanations of how space and energy could have existed before time, thereby rendering the universe functionally eternal, sounds more naturalistic even if we don't quite understand all the details yet.
And so, this YouTuber here, she seems like she might be moldable. She seems like she might be honest.
Moldable seems like a gross way to describe someone. Like, it's a good thing that your personality is such that I feel like I might be able to shape you into being who I think you should be. It sounds creepy, Matt. Maybe try not to be creepy.
And she seems to be fairly sincere, and so hopefully Anna, if you're watching this video,
Yeah, sorry to break it to you, Matt, but she almost certainly has not and will never watch either your video or my video.
However, we do know that there was a moment of creation, of course. And as I said, it was once believed that our entire universe, not just Earth, not just our solar system, not just our galaxy, everything, our entire universe was once this big.
The actual size estimates vary. I have heard everything from the size of a period in Times New Roman 12-point font to the size of a grapefruit, but the point is, all of the energy that makes up the universe now was compressed into a very small area.
And that is what scientists say. And that's what a lot of people will say about the Big Bang Theory, is that everything was condensed down to an infinitesimal amount of space smaller than a single proton.
Again, I've heard different estimates for the actual size, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The singularity is more a function of math than anything else. The singularity occurs whenever the property of an object approaches infinity. It is possible that there wasn't even a singularity. One model for the universe is a bouncing cosmology model, similar to the old idea of a universe that goes through cycles, bouncing back and forth between expansion and contraction, but not quite identical to it. This model does away with the singularity altogether. And even better, it makes testable predictions about what kinds of gravitational wave observations we could expect as remnants of older universes if it turns out to be correct. So while there is currently no evidence to support it, it at least has a path to providing direct evidence rather than just mathematics, which is what all the other models rely on.
And then in a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second, It went from the size of that tiny point to something billions of miles across. And so, water, for example, can only be compressed down to a certain point. It can hardly be compressed at all.
Firstly, you can compress water, but all else being equal, liquids are less compressible than gases. Secondly, nobody is suggesting that water was present in the singularity. If the singularity ends up being what existed before the Big Bang, there was no water. It would have been pure energy. Eventually, after the Big Bang, nucleosynthesis began and some hydrogen, helium, lithium, and beryllium started forming, but there still wouldn't have been water, as oxygen wouldn't have formed for another few 100 million years, needing stellar fusion to make it. So yes, water can compress. And no, this fact is not important to Big Bang cosmology because water wasn't there.
And so there are 326 million trillion gallons of water here on Earth alone. And so, is it really rational? Is it really logical? Is it really scientific to say that 326 million trillion gallons of water was condensed down to a space this small?
No, it's not. And that's not what is being said. That is an erroneous conclusion that you have drawn from the commonly repeated line about the whole universe being compressed into a single dot. That line is not technically incorrect, but it leaves out the fact that it was not the stuff that we are familiar with in the universe today that was being compressed in its current form down into a small dot. The dot would not have been actual stuff. Molecules and atoms didn't exist then. And unless you deny the existence of black holes, you already know this sort of thing. A black hole has a singularity at its center, an area with a mathematically infinite density. Anything that goes into a black hole gets compressed into a tiny dot, much more compressed than it could be under normal circumstances.
I would definitely venture to say that, if you truly believe this, if you believe what you're saying, that all the matter was condensed down to an infinitesimal amount of space that we observe here in the universe, all of this matter, I would really encourage you to re-examine your position on that.
And scientists are constantly re-evaluating their position on that. There are a few different solutions to relativity that leave us with a Big Bang that didn't start as a singularity. The solution that gets us to the singularity is known as the Schwarzschild solution. But there's also an entire class of solutions to relativity known as the Friedmann-Robertson-Walker solutions, which do not end up at a singularity. And of course, there is the previously mentioned study which suggests a kind of bouncing cosmology as a solution that also doesn't end up at a singularity. Thing is, though, whatever else happens, the cosmology basically has to match up with the theory of relativity. Relativity is so well demonstrated at this point that it is almost unthinkable that something would completely replace it. Quantum gravity may supersede it in the same way relativity superseded Newtonian gravity, but relativity will still hold true in the scenarios that it applies to. Relativity as a theory has made many predictions well in advance of our ability to test those predictions, the most drastic example of which was the prediction of gravitational waves, which weren't actually observed until about a century later. There's also the way gravity bends light and the cosmic microwave background radiation. All of these were predictions that could have demonstrated a fatal flaw in relativity, but they didn't. We use relativity whenever we use a GPS, and without correcting for time dilation, the GPS satellites would place you in the wrong location. And relativity is one of the ways we have figured out the age of the universe, by deriving the Friedmann equations from the general relativity equations and then solving for t. So regardless of the original form the universe took, whether it was a singularity or something else, the Big Bang did happen. And it happened 13.7 billion years ago. And scientists are constantly re-evaluating these conclusions and publishing their work for other scientists to scrutinize. What work are you doing in the field of cosmology? Have you managed to come up with a solution to general relativity that somehow does not end up with a Big Bang billions of years ago? Can you do what every third grader knows how to do and show your work? Or are you just making assertions based on your intuition and hoping that nobody will check up on your claims? Will he manage to demonstrate even the most rudimentary understanding of anything scientific? To find out, tune in tomorrow. Same Rhino time, same Rhino channel.